the question of how we define the sort of parameters of engagement, I think, is difficult. I think that's one of the things that going into this we knew was going to be difficult, and through doing it we've discovered that it really is difficult, and I think we haven't worked it out yet, and in a sense we've been sort of shielded from having to work it out by the fact that it's still a relatively small initiative. So one of the things I think we've always been quite bad at the RSA is really sort of drilling down into the sort of criteria of what is something, why do we do individual initiatives, what makes something an RSA thing to do, whether it's by fellows, whether it's by RSA staff, and we've always kind of sort of worked on the sort of, looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, and you know it when you see it, and I think we're still slightly operating at that level, which is okay because there's only sort of a relatively small number of things going on, but at some point I think we need to get much more systematic about what sort of pathways ideas take.
There was a lot of process chats. We were talking, a lot of the early networks were very much process focused. There were lots of how questions, and I think that again was reflected in-house with us, sort of having a lot of meetings about how do we do this, what model do we use for that, what's the relationship between fellowship and programme, what's the relationship between a network that calls itself an RSA network but might not adhere to the kind of values of the RSA, do we need criteria, those kind of questions, and it was all, I think, trying to work out where we were going, really.
When you define the kind of boundaries, people home in on trying to define these lines, and actually the easiest way to define space is to define what's outside it. But so much effort goes into the defining of these lines in order to name that space.
And when you say what we don't support, do you mean what we don't support?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, rather than what we would allow to permit to go up on the platform. This is what we're going to spend our time on, and what we're not going to spend our time on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a kind of almost a way of eliminating. So, for example, one of the projects we've got here is about this. The woman who stood up at the end talking about enjoyment. I don't know if all of you were in the room actually, but she was talking about enjoyment. It turns out she runs an organisation which is all about enjoyment. And having that list of things would it mean that with the email or the phone call, the first contact, we can actually say, by the way, these are the things we don't support.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about your project. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's that, isn't it? Rather than excluding people from the platform, because the platform, in a sense, we don't have control over.
Do you think it would be good though to put it up kind of in a public place on the platform like this list? Just because I think I can just imagine the kind of conversation about, oh, what else is on your secret list?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of paranoid people out there.
I think
it'd be good.
Yeah, definitely. It's transparency, isn't it?
Yeah.
And confidence about what we're doing.
I think that's probably becoming quite an urgent task, actually. Who makes those decisions and what sort of basis they make those decisions, and how those decisions can be open, how they can be transparent and how they can be open to input whilst still being decisions. I mean, I think, how you enable collaboration without allowing just sort of endless discussion, and actually enable, at some point, someone has to say, this one yes, this one no.